And yet, aren't you part of that problem? You're absolutely of the culture that upvotes, that downvotes. Looking at the sort of sideline on one of your YouTubes, and there's a lot of Jordan Peterson destroys so-and-so, kills someone.
Yeah, well,
this seems to me a very odd and reprehensible kind of sort of consequence of some of the way that your argument is presented. And do you feel any responsibility there?
Uh-oh, get ready. You're about to see Jordan Peterson do what he does best, and that is shutting down feminists. We're going to get a masterclass in argumentation debate, and make sure to stick with me at the very end of this video when we're going to see for ourselves precisely why Peterson is so successful in making liberals trip up over their own arguments. You're not going to want to miss this. Greetings, everyone. It's me, Dr. Steve, your patron professor, here to help you to think better so you can feel better in these crazy and turbulent and increasingly woke times. So if you haven't already done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button, and let's dive right in.
I mean, one view of this large popularity that you're enjoying at the moment, the moment, if you like, the Jordan Peterson moment, is that you've captured a kind of space between what many people think and what they're being told to think. Does that ring a bell with you? And do you think that's a fair description? Is that something you're kind of aiming to do?
Well, I think that people have a sense that the manner in which our public discourse is being conducted has tremendous danger. And the danger is essentially the elevation of the collective over the individual, and that poses a danger both on the left and on the right. And I think that by appealing to the notion of individual sovereignty, which I would say is the primary, it's the meta message behind all of the things that I've been writing about, that people find that to be a great relief, even though what I'm asking them to do is to bear more responsibility for what they do than they might typically be inclined to. And so, but I'm facing some of the issues that people confront in their lives very squarely. I believe the fundamental religious truth of the idea that life is suffering. It's suffering because we're mortal and fragile, and because we're also subject to malevolence at our own hands and at the hands of others. It's a constant existential problem. And that can make you bitter and can make you hopeless and nihilistic and depressed and anxious and likely to abuse substances of various sorts as a medication or an escape. It can augur you in a very large number of ways. And I'm suggesting to people that there is a way out of that. And the way out is to confront that forthrightly and to adopt responsibility in your own life and to try to make the world a better place, and that it's necessary to do that. And that if you don't do that, that things go badly. And it's a relief to people to hear that because they know it. They already know it.
So get a grip on yourself.
Well, it's more find something in your life that's so worthwhile doing that the fact that you're going to suffer is justifiable.
But if that something of value were, for instance, for someone to decide that they are a radical feminist or a radical trans campaigner, that would be something of great value in their lives. But
let me stop there because I think this is just so revealing. Did you notice how her question demonstrated that she had no idea what Peterson just said? That interviewer, Anne McElvoy, The Economist, was absolutely clueless on Peterson's entire opening argument. His whole point was that his popularity is based on the fact that he is articulating, perhaps more or better than anyone else out there, the unparalleled life benefits of genuine, authentic individuality, what he calls individual sovereignty, which requires by its very nature, and this is key, personal responsibility, as over and against the victimology inherent in the discourse of group identity politics, which shifts the blame away from the individual and onto others, onto supposedly oppressor groups. That, according to Peterson, is a recipe for misery and disastrous life choices. And this interviewer follows that up immediately with a question, so does what you're saying apply to a radical feminist or a radical trans campaigner? So we can see right away that this interviewer does not understand Jordan Peterson's whole point. In other words, her question basically was this. So do you believe your call for people to live lives free from the miseries of identity politics equally applies to those who are dedicated to embracing identity politics? Shows to me, at least, that this person is not listening. She's fishing, right? She's fishing for ways to catch him. She's not listening. Let's see how Peterson responds.
A radical feminist or a radical trans campaigner, that would be something of great value in their lives. But these are not positions that I think you think have been
it's
hugely
generally
helpful.
Not of great value in their life, because what they're doing is abdicating their personal responsibility to live by their own truth, let's say, to adherence to an ideology. And I'm not a fan of ideologies. I think they're unbelievably dangerous. And I don't really care whether they're on the left or the right. So to be a feminist or a trans activist or to adopt that group-fostered view of the world, I think is generally a mistake. And I don't think it does people any good. Not usually. And it also allows them to adopt, and this is something else that's gone very wrong with our political discourse, is that it allows people to adopt an unearned sense of moral superiority and also of omniscient knowledge, because an ideology offers you that. And there's just nothing in that's helpful.
So what
it
you
just
have
fragments people.
But then,
boom, there it is. That was a perfect answer, consistent with his opening statement and that rather obvious lack of understanding by the interviewer. In fact, I think that was one of the nicest ways I've ever heard calling another person an utter idiot. And I did very much appreciate how he called out the arbitrary moral high ground that is assumed. That's very important here. It's assumed by proponents of identity politics. It's actually rooted in Herbert Marcuse's notion of repressive tolerance, which is a cultural Marxist notion that supposedly oppressed groups, minority groups, are always assumed to be good, whereas supposedly oppressor groups, the dominant ethnic or gender majority, are always assumed to be bad. And that arbitrary moral system inherent in identity politics is one of the major contributors to personal and emotional fragmentation.
Thing that can be encapsulated politically.
But if we look at some of the great classic liberals of the 19th century, and we look back to Mill, for example, you have individual liberty very strongly in there from Locke onwards, a sort of the sense of sovereignty, and no one from the monarch down has the right to unfair sovereignty over another man or woman. But you also have a strongly kind of progressive sense that develops as liberalism develops and takes you towards women's franchise, towards, actually in Mill's case, a fairly out there feminism. If J.S. Mill was sitting here instead of me, would you be seeing eye to eye on whether that was a good idea?
Well, again, I think it depends on what you mean by feminism. I mean, the idea that it would be a good thing for the world to arrange itself so that the talents of women were as available to use by the collective, let's say, by the group or by society as the talents of men, then obviously that's all for the good. I don't have any problem with that whatsoever, because talent's in short supply, and it's a foolish society that wastes it no matter where it manifests itself. Racial divisions or ethnic divisions or any of that, equality of opportunity, I can't see how you can be a sensible person and not
do you
possess...
think do women have opportunity? Sorry, do women have equality of opportunity then broadly across Western societies?
Compared to what?
Compared to not having equality of opportunity.
Well, compared to 100 years ago, yes. Compared to 50 years ago, yes. Compared to most places in the world throughout history, yes. Compared to a hypothetical ideal, no. But I'm very, very leery.
Would that hypothetical ideal be a good ideal or a bad ideal?
Well, it depends on how you define equality. If you define it as equality of outcome, then it's a catastrophic ideal. See, this is something too. One of the things I've been struggling with recently is the idea of boundaries, let's say. We know absolutely, and this is relevant to your questions on progressivism, we know that the left can go too far, and we know that the right can go too far. I mean, I would say that's the abject lesson of the 20th century. Both can go too far. And we kind of know when the right goes too far. We probably think the right goes too far, if you had to boil it down to one thing, when people start making claims of racial or ethnic superiority. That seems to be the marker. But we don't know when the left goes too far. And the left, to be frank about it, isn't very careful about differentiating itself into those who are pursuing a reasonable progressive agenda and those who have seriously gone too far. And I would say that when people push an equality of outcome agenda, they've gone too far. Even though it's not as blatantly horrifying, let's say, as claims of ethnic or racial superiority, the consequences of playing that idea out in the world are seriously not good.
All right, so that was interesting because this interviewer was trying to make the argument that 19th century liberalism, which championed the integrity of the individual, included progressive notions of equality. As you notice with Peterson, whenever he hears that word, he wants to know what you mean. Define it. What do you mean by equality? Are we talking about equality of opportunity, which he's all for? Are we talking about equality of outcome, which is utterly and totally catastrophic and is the pernicious hallmark of identity politics, which means, and this is again key for Peterson, identity politics is leftism gone too far. You'll notice that he observed that when it comes to right-wing politics, right? Somehow we're all well aware of it going too far to the extremes, right-wing that is. But as he rightly observed, such sensitivity towards extremes is missing on the left. Leftists appear totally incapable of discerning when liberal ideas go too far, which for Peterson manifests itself in the notion of an equality of outcome intrinsic to all identity politics. Now watch how this interviewer responds.
But surely they are, they're two kind of doorstops at the far ends of the arguments. I mean, very few people, I think, on the left, and there would be some who would advocate for absolute equality of outcome and everything it would take to achieve that.
It's not so clear to me
Similarly,
that that's a minority view.
There may be lots of things that are wrong both on the left and on the right that don't involve the right being overtly racist and the left wanting absolute equality of outcome. It's a space surely in the middle that matters, and that's why I suppose people feel that sometimes your argument is almost sort of, it's driving towards picking the fight rather than liberalism would, I suppose, encourage you to take the best, and we can have the argument about what's the best and what's the worst of everything that's in between.
No,
What's wrong with that?
I think that the left poses a far greater danger than your analysis suggests. I certainly see this in the universities. And the drum is being beat very, very hard, perhaps not so much here, but in North America for equality of opportunity or equality of outcome under the rubric of equity. And equity is essentially a doctrine that fosters the notion that equality of outcome is not only desirable, but should be pursued as an object or as an explicit aspect of public policy. The idea being that if there isn't equivalent representation of all possible groups at all possible levels of all possible hierarchies, that indicates a tyrannical prejudice that needs to be rooted out. And that's having an absolutely pernicious effect on institutions, especially educational institutions in North America. It's an increasingly widespread view, and I think it poses far more danger than you think.
Is it possible?
So this interviewer, McElvoy, tries to deny that this extreme leftism is really found in mainstream liberalism. And what is that extreme leftism? It's the equality of outcome that you see in identity politics, like in feminism and transgenderism and alike. And I think Peterson gave a good answer. He appealed to the pervasive nature of far-left extremism on college campuses, and I think it's on UK campuses as well. But you'll notice something rather glaring in that exchange. If Peterson really wanted to make his point and really wanted to shut her down, he could have simply pointed out to this interviewer that she was trying to deny that the extreme left has any major influence over mainstream liberal thought, all the while at the same time she appealed to that extremism at the beginning of the interview. Do you remember that? Right? What about the feminists? What about the trans activists? Doesn't your advice equally apply to them? In other words, she tried to deny that the identity politics that Peterson identified as leftist extremism had any real influence on liberalism, all the while her liberalism appealed to the very leftist extremism that Jordan Peterson identified. Is it any wonder that he seems to be doodling throughout that interview? What's the deal with that? He appears so bored with these questions with people who just don't get it. They're so self-unaware. Anyway, You could catch the whole of the interview on YouTube, which I would suggest, but I thought that those exchanges were particularly revealing in terms of precisely why liberals despise Jordan Peterson so much. He has perhaps more than anyone else profoundly and analytically unpacked their worldview in a way that they're just not used to, and as a result, liberals end up tripping over their own arguments. It's really a fascinating and fun thing to see. As always, gang, make sure you smack that bell and subscribe button, and you will definitely want to check out my latest video on Jordan Peterson leaving Joe Rogan absolutely speechless on the Bible. It's stunning, and you're not going to want to miss it. So make sure to click on that link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.